You're listening to Upon Further Review on the Raiders Podcast Network. Here's your host, Eddie Paskal.
Raider Nation, what is going on? Eddie Paskal and the Remote Boys are back for another episode of Upon Further Review. And I said it last week, and I genuinely mean it, and it's becoming even truer that during these times of isolation, these times of being alone, these times of, well, not really having a whole heck of a lot to do, I look forward to our little hang sessions more and more each week. And we do have a good one. As I said, I'm here in Henderson, Nevada. Producer Trav in his usual locale in San Jose, California. And KMM, the great Kyle Cannon Booby Martin, who will join us in just a bit, is still, as far as I know, he's been very reluctant to deliver more details about his living situation. But I do believe that he is at his undisclosed location still somewhere in the Northern California backwoods. But regardless, we soldier on, and we actually have a good show today, man. I'm feeling pretty good about what we're gonna chef up in the quarantine kitchen. The great Double M himself, Mike Mayock, as you guys all know, gave his pre-draft press conference, a press conference that I think is absolutely ridiculous and asinine that you have to have. More on that later. But he entered the mix, gave a conference call last night, or I guess technically yesterday afternoon. So we're going to play some of the best portions of what Double M had to say yesterday to the media as our interview portion for this week. But before you guys get to Double M, and let's be honest, I know you guys are here almost exclusively for Double M this week. We do have transactions and just a single transaction this week, but an important one nonetheless. Just a few days ago, the Silver and Black re-signed restricted free agent linebacker Nicolas Moro. Those of you who are unfamiliar with Mr. Moro's work, started all 16 games last year, made 8 starts, and really had a career year, a career high in starts with 8, a career high in tackles with 73, recorded his first interception, his first career interception, and just a good, solid kind of depth piece to add to that linebacking core. How and what role he fills in 2020 remains to be seen, because as we know, this linebacking core is being reworked, rebuilt, whatever word you want to use, both in free agency, and I think a lot of us anticipate in the draft as well. But congratulations to Mr. Moro, a good dude, a man proclaimed by the great KMM as the Greenville Monster, and the Monster will reside in Vegas through 2020. So that is net positive news, because Nick Moro, good dude, man, really good guy, and like I said, a good depth piece on the Paul Guenther's defense. So we get into our headlines, and really there's two headlines, two things I want to touch on real quick before we enter the Mayock. Number one, the virtual offseason program. So we've talked about this a lot, and we've kind of speculated and danced around it and not really known exactly how the NFL is going to handle it, because, well, I don't know if the NFL knows how it's handling much of anything right now. But the news came down earlier this week. I believe broken by a close personal friend of ours, Tom Pelissero, and then essentially confirmed by Double M yesterday. The virtual offseason program will begin on April 20th, which is next week. The Silver and Black are actually going to begin theirs after the draft on April 27th. So some teams will begin next week. The Raiders will not be amongst them. As I said, they begin on 4/27. And essentially what it is, it's a way to kind of get these guys together, get the teams, the players, quote unquote, together as you can in these kind of virtual times. And they're going to have some time to go through the playbook, that kind of stuff. You know, essentially a lot of the stuff that they would do during the normal offseason program when everyone's together. But I think the one kind of newsworthy thing on top of this for me when I was going through Pelissero's report was that if one of the league's 32 team facilities is closed, because let's be honest, we don't know when facilities are opening, and the longer we get into this process, we are kind of figuring out that it's going to be a state by state, location by location, kind of gradual reopening whenever that is. But Pelissero said that if any of the league's 32 facilities are closed, then all of the facilities will remain closed, and guys won't be able to get in there and do things. So everyone will remain virtual unless all 32 are open, which is good for a number of reasons. One, off the top, health reasons, right? I think that everyone is overly concerned in a good way about making sure everyone is doing the right things. And, I know that we're going to hopefully be opening in some capacity in the next month or two. God only knows what that looks like. But I'm glad that if not everyone is open, that everything is going to be remain closed. And secondly, is just that competitive balance, right? Where it seems unfair. And I'm just throwing a team out here. If the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they can get in their facility, but the Chargers, the Browns, or us, if we can't get in. So I think that's important that, there's going to be kind of a level playing field across the league, which is good. Everyone's going to be going through the same rules, have the same restrictions, and hopefully, we're getting back to some meaningful semblance of football or workouts or whatever it is at some point in the coming days, weeks, and months. And secondly, too, man, it's just good to have that structure for the guys. I know that we're all kind of going crazy here, staying in the house and trying to figure out how to fill our days a little bit, and I'm sure it's the same for them. So. Offseason virtual, I should say, offseason program begins for the league on April 20th, but the Raiders will begin theirs on 4/27. So good news there. Secondly, and a little bit that I've kind of enjoyed the past couple of weeks. I think it's important. Once again, we give a little love to the good guys of COVID-19, and he just missed it last week. Cleveland Farrell just missed it. He almost got his charitable donation in before we recorded, but he didn't. He was so close, so close. So it's time for him to get a little bit of love right now, as our very own Cleve Farrell pledges $100,000 to his hometown of Richmond, Virginia. Cleve's going to make that donation, or I should say he already has made that donation, to the eviction diversion program, which helps families struggling to make ends meet in this incredibly challenging time financially for so many people. So bravo, Cleveland Farrell. And I'm sorry we didn't get to you last week, but you didn't break the news soon enough, brother. You came close. You came really close, but alas, you didn't get it in time. The other guy, the other good guy of COVID-19 is our very own Double M, the great Mike Mayock, a guy who you will hear from in just a second. But Mayock announced yesterday on this conference call that him and his wife will be donating $1,000 to Delivering with Dignity. That's a Clark County program that aims to bring food to those who have been affected by the ongoing crisis of coronavirus, or COVID-19, I should say. And they're going to donate $1,000 per pick in next week's NFL draft, with a minimum, and I believe we have 7 picks right now. So he will do at the minimum, $7,000 to that organization. And hey, if we're rocking and rolling and Double M's moving around the board Matrix style, and we're adding more picks, $1,000 for every additional pick. So bravo to Double M, bravo to his wife Amanda, bravo to the entire Mayock clan. Very, very well done. And it has been nice, man, to see people come together and help those who are honestly, man, who are hurt and who need that help. So well done, Clee. Well done, Double M. And yeah, man, let's keep this positive momentum going. Let's keep helping each other where we can. Let's keep staying positive, and hopefully we see some light at the end of the tunnel here sooner than later. But speaking of Double M, as I teased at the top of the show, Mike gave his pre-draft press conference, and obviously under normal circumstances he would do this at 12:20, but no one's in there right now. So Mike did a conference call yesterday, and so producer Trav, I think we just cue it up, baby. Let the Mayock go. Let the Mayock unleash his knowledge. So here we go. Some of the best bits from yesterday's conference call with General Manager Mike Mayock.
First of all, everybody, I'd like to extend my family's thoughts and prayers in a very difficult period of time, both for our country and internationally. I've been moved by several gestures from both my family and our Raider family recently. Mark Davis donated $1 million to the Las Vegas community to fight the coronavirus. Our first-round pick a year ago, Cleve Farrell, donated $100,000 to his hometown of Richmond, Virginia, in their eviction diversion program, helping struggling families make ends meet. And then my wife showed me the other day that 4 of our rookies from last year, Alec Ingold, Hunter Renfro, Foster Moreau, and Josh Jacobs, have partnered with 3 Square in Vegas to provide emergency food funds for people that need it. And just this past weekend, my son Michael was involved in feeding 3,500 healthcare workers at 10 area hospitals in Philadelphia. So my wife, Mandy, and I kind of sat back and wondered why we weren't helping. And So what we'd like to do, my wife and I, we'll be donating $1,000 for each draft pick the Raiders make this year to the Clark County Delivering with Dignity program. It supports vulnerable families in the Las Vegas Valley. The cool thing is that each donation will be made in the name of the individual draft selection made by the Raiders during the 2020 draft. The Delivering with Dignity program assists people who are most at risk for contracting coronavirus. If they leave their homes, benefiting youth who are sheltered in place, the elderly, and those with underlying medical conditions. If you want more information on this program, Will Kiss can provide it after we're done today. But I think it's pretty cool. Tied into the draft a little bit. We have 7 picks right now, so that's 7,000. If we trade up and lose a couple picks, we'll keep it a minimum of 7,000. And if we trade down and get more picks, it'll go up to whatever it goes up to. So Mandy and I are both very, very excited about it and would appreciate any potential support. Thank you. So having said all that, and it's a lot more than I usually say, let's open it up to questions.
All right. Thanks a lot, Mike. First up, we have Jerry McDonald from the Bay Area News Group.
Hey, Mike, you're about to embark on a virtual draft followed by a virtual off-season program. I'm just curious if you could speak to sort of the challenges of that and whether, such a potentially limited off-season, what kind of effect will that have on the players that you bring in? And are some positions more difficult than others, like, say, quarterback?
Yeah, it's a good question. And, first of all, as far as the draft is concerned, I kind of laugh because everybody's talking about this virtual draft and how high-tech it is. If you could see my living room right now, it's the ultimate in low-tech. I've got 5 huge whiteboards, and I probably have 1,000 magnets with names on them all over the place. So I kind of feel like I'm sitting in the middle of a 1976 draft room, and it's kind of back to the future. But you're 100% right. As far as the process is concerned in the draft, we've spent a lot of time on Zoom. Our coaches have done an unbelievable job of preparing information to challenge the college player via the Zoom. I don't even know how many we've done so far, but it's been pretty cool spending up to an hour with each of these individual kids and getting to know them that way. So from a draft process, Jerry, we're all doing it the same way. Nobody's got an advantage, and the Raiders are 100% prepared and ready to go, and we're excited about this draft. So I don't think it necessarily hurts anybody. We're all playing by the same rules. I think the harder thing with this draft is the medical side of it. Just trying to verify, especially the guys that had surgery after the new year, what kind of rehab they're having. Are they going to be in time for training camp? And then we get into the whole process of, will there be a training camp? Is there any part of the off-season program that won't be virtual? And, Jerry, I think that's where it really gets tricky. And that's where I'm really happy with Coach Gruden and the coaching staff. And, we're going to start on April 27th so that our rookies can be involved and our draft picks can be involved. And, again, there's going to be a lot of meetings via Zoom or Microsoft Teams or whatever we're going to use for that. We're going to emphasize the installation, the mental side of it. This is where having the right guys in the locker room, Jerry, mean a lot. Who's working out on their own, who's doing what's necessary to stay in shape to the extent that they can. You mentioned the quarterback position. We're very, very appreciative to have Derek Carr. He knows John's offense. He's going into year 3 of it. Marcus Mariota, John and I both know him very, very well. So we feel really good about the quarterback position, and we feel good about the type of kids that we have in our program. The hard part is we've got a big free agency class, and we've got to kind of get them invested and up to speed as soon as possible. And I think that really is the trick right there.
All right, Paul Gutierrez from ESPN.com.
Hey, Mike, I know you said it seems like there's no advantage. Everybody's kind of in the same boat as far as the virtual aspect of things. But given your history as a virtual GM for all 32 teams for the NFL Network, how much more comfortable then are you heading into this virtual draft as the GM of one team? Because you have experience in kind of dealing with this kind of thing anyway, in terms of not having that face-to-face time like you would anyway.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. A virtual GM for 32 teams, huh, Paul? That's I like that. Yeah, that's a fancy way of saying I sat in my living room and watched a lot of film. You know what? I think I think you have two decisions to make. You can go one or two ways here. When the NFL decreed what was going to happen here, I think you either embrace it and say, this is pretty freaking cool, that we're really just going to watch film and trust who we are as evaluators and trust in who we want in our building. Or you can kind of look at it and say, oh, well, I don't have verified medicals and I don't have verified 40s. I don't have verified height, weight, speed, and panic about it. And I think we've kind of, as a team, as a building, we've collectively said, we're going to embrace it. And to be honest with you, maybe for me personally, Paul, part of it is kind of what I've done for the last 20 years. It truly is. I feel very comfortable sitting at my dining room, crunching tape, calling college coaches, and looking to get any advantage and any information I can on every guy we're interested in. So it's a really good question. And to be honest with you, we're just, as a group, we're embracing it. I think it's been a great process.
Okay, next up is Vinny from Las Vegas Review-Journal.
Hey, Mike. You guys are pretty active in free agency, checking off some boxes, especially defensively. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what you guys were able to do specifically at linebacker. Also, how did Rod Marinelli fit into that, especially with your defensive line acquisitions? And do you feel like you've put yourself in a pretty strong position, being now transitioning to the draft?
Yeah, Vinny, I think what we've been able to do is spread around the money a little bit in free agency to plug some holes, especially on the defensive side of the ball, that needed to be plugged. And we've done it with guys that are both young and have a consistent amount of playing ability, and a lot of them have been starters. So, you talk about the linebackers. Corey Littleton covers as well as anybody in the league. We feel like Kwiatkowski will wear the green dot and fit in seamlessly with what we do. Carl Nassib plays just like Farrell and Crosby. He's 6'6", 275. We'll get off the bus with three long, powerful, tough defensive ends. He'll fit right in. And Malik Collins, Rod obviously coached him last year, and Rod jumped up on the table in support of what this kid can be. And the cool thing about it is, and a couple of them may have had birthdays, I think all of them are 26 years old right now. So we got 4 potential starters. All of them are plus or minus 26 years old. And it really enhances who we are in our defensive front. And then on the back end, we get Jeff Heath, who started an awful lot of football games for the Cowboys, and Damarious Randall, who, when he came out of Arizona State, I thought he was the number 1 free safety in that draft. So again, we got another young player in Randall. We got Heath, some experience. And I think what it does is it allows us to go into the draft on the defensive side of the ball and just kind of say, okay, where's the best football player? Let's go get him.
Thank you, Scott Bear from NBC Sports Bay Area.
Hey, Mike. It was on the NFL draft's third day last year where you were able to pick up a number of instant impact players. Was there anything from that day or any particular pick that really stands out to you in terms of getting Crosby or Hunter or Foster? Anything that really stands out from that day?
Scott, I'll tell you what stands out is just kind of learning a lesson, and it's not an easy one, especially in your first draft, and that is just having to be patient and the power of patience. And we had talked about moving up a couple different times throughout the first 2 or 3 rounds. We talked it through. We decided not to do it. And we got in the second round. We traded back twice and still got the one player we wanted, Trayvon Mullen. It gave us some extra picks on the third day. We traded back 2 times again in the 4th round, and then traded up in the 5th round to come get Hunter Renfrow. So I think the one thing I learned is that even though I wanted to be impulsive, I think that it helped that John and I talked everything through and kind of decided to be patient. And ultimately, we let the draft come to us a little bit. And through that process, we generated 2 or 3 extra picks that turned into pretty good football players. So, obviously, you want to be aggressive, and you want to go after the players you want. But in hindsight, on the third day, you get Max Crosby at 106. We think Isaiah Johnson, who's a 4th-round pick, has a chance to be very good. Foster Moreau had a heck of a season as a rookie till he got hurt. And Hunter Renfrow, as a 5th-round pick, had a big year in a slot. So, I think a lot of people get fired up, and the mock drafts are all about the first round, and, people scream and yell about who the quarterbacks are. But at the end of the day, to me, the third day is just as important as the first, and so is the acquisition of the college free agents.
All right, Vic Tafer from The Athletic.
Hey, Mike, I'm going to get back to the quarterback situation. Why is Marcus Mariota a good fit, and how do you see the QB room as a whole right now?
I think the cool thing with my background and John's background is a lot of things we said and did in our past are public. So if you're Marcus Mariota and you want to know what the general manager of the Raiders thought about him before he came out, or what John Gruden thought about him before he came out, all he's got to do is go back and check public records. I mean, he went through Gruden's quarterback camp on television. I had him as a top quarterback in that draft. He knows that both of us believed in him coming out and still believe in him. He's got to get healthy. We've got to rebuild him a little bit, just get his confidence back, build him up from the ground up. It's going to take a little while, I think, just to get him healthy and where he wants to be. But we're excited about the quarterback room. And I thought Marcus did a great job with the first couple interviews he had, just talking about where he was, which is he wants to support Dirk. He wants to become the best version of Marcus Mariota that he can become. And that's the way we look at it. Let's see who the best Marcus Mariota is. And in the meantime, we love what we have with Derek Carr. So we're real happy with our quarterback room. We've got Nate Peterman, who played well till he was hurt. Deshaun Kaiser, a former 2nd-round pick. So we feel like we've got a very strong quarterback room.
Okay, Ed Graney from the Las Vegas Review-Journal.
Hey, Mike, you talked about panic compared to people who really think they're locked in and research, but some have surmised maybe if the research isn't what it was in the past, pro days, meeting guys face-to-face, that teams might be willing to come off more on these first-round picks than they have in the past and trade down if they're not completely sure, or if you're locked in, you'll take the pick. Do you think this break will make that first round even more erratic, or do you think it'll be kind of like the same as it's always been?
I think the bigger change comes on the third day and thereafter, because the first day prospects, for the most part, you've got 2 to 3 years of film. Most of them at least were at the combine, and you have at least a height and weight, if not verified 40 times, et cetera. So for the bigger name guys, there are less question marks, with the one exception of medical. And that's the one, again, where I think most teams have the most concern. If we don't know as well as we have in year past with combine rechecks and medical, and there's always been a consistency of how that was performed. So I think the biggest issue early on is just the medical status of a lot of these guys. But outside of that, if you don't know these first-round guys, I mean, there's plenty of tape, plenty of opportunity to get on Zoom with them. I think it's more kind of that third day when you start talking about guys that don't have as much tape, guys that don't have verified, guys that were not at the combine. We're getting an awful lot of tape and information from agents that are doing ad hoc pro days, and how much of that can you trust or not trust. So I think more of the question marks begin to surface the further you get into this draft. I think the first round, for the most part, will be similar to most years.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ed.
Eddie Paskal from Raiders.com.
Hey, Mike, you and Coach Gruden were so nimble throughout the draft last year, trading and moving around, especially later in the draft. Do you think that given the constraints this year in terms of who's allowed to be where, do you think that'll have any impact on if you guys are able to do that if you so choose?
I hope there's no impact, Eddie. I've got to spend some time later this week once we get all our telecommunication stuff set up. And I basically have to figure out, and, I'm about 100 years old, so I've got to sit here and figure out how to screen share and have 4 different people on one screen and make sure I understand, if there are multiple trades going on at the same time, how we're handling it, how we're communicating. Are we texting? Can I see anything visually? So really the challenge for me, because I'm not very good at that kind of stuff, it's a lot easier when somebody's sitting across from me and passing me a note saying, hey, Atlanta wants to talk to you while I'm on the phone with Detroit. So I'm anxious to, and I'm kind of old school in the sense that I think if you practice enough at anything, you can get good at it. So I'm anxious to get the communication stuff into my house. I'm anxious to get everybody around the country that I need to communicate with together. And I got to start practicing because I'll be the first to tell you I'm clueless when it comes to sharing a screen.
All right, Josh Dubow from the Associated Press.
Hey, Mike, you talked about the additions you made on defense. The one spot you guys weren't able to do much on was at cornerback. Where do you see that spot on the roster now? And is that something that you're hoping you'll be able to address next week in the draft?
Well, where we are today is we feel like we've got a bunch of talented young kids that we don't know enough about yet. Trayvon played really well the second half of the season. We believe that he's going to be a starter for years to come. Isaiah Johnson was a 4th-round pick, former wide receiver with all kinds of physical skill set. We love his traits. He got hurt early. We brought him back late. He's a guy we can't wait to see play. Keyshawn Nixon was a free agent out of South Carolina that made the team and played well on special teams. He's a really competitive young man. And Dylan Mabin is another kid out of Fordham who got hurt and didn't get a chance to show what he could do. So we've got 4 or 5 young corners who we're kind of intrigued by. Now, do we think we need to get better there? Yeah. But you always have to be careful to see how the board falls. I think the biggest mistakes people make is trying to reach for need. So the board will fall whatever way it falls, and if we're fortunate enough to get a corner, that'd be great.
All right, one more before we open it up to everybody else. MJ Acosta from NFL Network.
Hi, Mike. You mentioned in the combine and over several months that there are needs to fill sort of all over the roster, but one glaring one was certainly at the wide receiver position. With the amount of talent that there is at wideout in this year's draft, is that a position that you could possibly take a closer look at compared to others?
Well, I think wideout this year is pretty cool. And the comment I made at the combine was in a typical year, and the average is 12 to 13 wide receivers typically get drafted in the first 3 rounds of the draft over the last 5 years. And I think you could have plus or minus 20 of them that are graded that way. I'm not saying they'll go that way, but they're certainly graded that way. So there are a bunch of guys at the top end of the draft that are considered first round. There are going to be guys in the 4th round that typically would go in the 3rd round or earlier. So there's quality at the top. There's depth throughout. There's no secret that we need to get better at wideout. We understand that. We really like adding Nelson Aguilar, but we still need to get better at wideout. And again, it's kind of like the corner conversation. I think you got to let it come to you a little bit. And whether it's in the 1st round, 2nd round, 3rd round, 5th round, I'm hoping we can find a wideout that fits what the Raiders need and fits our culture.
Okay, thanks, everyone. We got about 5 more minutes left with Mike. So if there's anybody with some outstanding questions, just speak up and try to be respectful of one another, and we'll try to get it all in.
Hey, Mike.
This is Tashawn Reed from The Athletic. Hey, Mike. I just want to ask, how do you go about the process of determining positions where you may not need a starter, but you can benefit from drafting players who can provide some competitive depth later on?
Yeah, I think that got a little bit convoluted, but I think you're talking about how do you go about looking for not necessarily starters, but depth positions. Somebody's
right.
Got their if you guys could turn it on mute, it would really help because I'm getting some really bad feedback now. Thank you. So as far as the whole depth conversation, it's a good one. And I think it starts with, where are you salary cap? Where are you when you look on your own roster a year or two down the road. Where are positions where players are getting older and making a lot of money? And at some point, where can you bring in a younger guy that may not necessarily start year one, but by year 2 or 3 begins to infill for the aging veteran that might be making a lot of money? And I think that's the reality of our league. That's the reality of managing a salary cap. And I think while we're all looking for starters, let's face it, we're also looking for guys that need a year or two to develop and ultimately could fit into a role for a team.
Hey, Mike, this is Vinny
Mike.
again. When you look at the 3 top wide receivers that most people have at the top of their particular boards, 3 dynamic players, but they're very unique compared to each other. There's like different things that each of them do compared to each other. How much of that evaluation becomes type of the scheme that you guys are running, and how each of those type of players would fit into your system, as opposed to just who's the better player necessarily?
Well, I'm not sure which 3 you think are the best, or which compared to which 3 I think are the best.
Well, I would just say Jerry Jeudy, CeeDee Lamb, and Henry Ruggs. Just as that seems to be the consensus top 3.
And the question is again, what is it fit?
They
for
seem
our
to be
system?
they seem to be different from each other. Like they're all 3 obviously good players, but they do things maybe 3 different ways, at least perception wise. So when you look at their skill sets individually, how much of that becomes the fit in your scheme that you guys are doing when you evaluate those 3 players?
Yeah, I think that's fair at every position, and that's a conversation John and I have all the time. Is fit? What is the right fit? And a guy could be a dynamic player at any position, and you look at him and you say, but does he fit what we're looking for at this position? And I think you're right. I think the 3 guys you mentioned all have different traits. I think they're all high-level players. There's a whole bunch of wideouts, and I think that's one of the things I said in December also, is that there's all kinds of flavors and sizes. And, if you need a big X, there's a bunch of big X receivers out there. Do you need a guy that can play slot NZ? Yes, check. There's a bunch of them. Are you looking for a wide receiver number 1? There could be a wide receiver number 1 in the 3rd round. And again, to your point, yeah, fit's really important. I think the cool thing, though, about John's offense is, and I think what he showed last year, especially with what we did with our tight ends, John's adaptable to whomever he has. And that's the cool thing. And that's been the kind of fun thing to talk to him about the wide receivers about. What does this guy do for us? Versus what does that guy do for us? John, what do you think is the best fit? We've had some great conversations about it, and I'm sure we will continue to do so right up till the draft.
Hey, Mike, you told us last year, I think on this call, that you have always been fond of picks 20 through 60. And right now you go from 19 to 80. Would you be surprised if when the draft is over that you didn't pick somebody from 20 through 60?
I guess all my words come back to me in shades of mediocrity, huh? I do like picks 20 through 60. What's intriguing about our picks this year, obviously, is I'm very thankful to have 2 first-round picks, but we have 3 in the 3rd. And again, to me, 3 picks in the 3rd is just like stealing. They ought to, if we're doing our jobs the right way, hopefully that's 3 more starters. Could we move up to get one? Could we move back to get one between 20 and 60? Sure. And again, we're running through every possible scenario that we could that we could be looking at, and we won't know till draft night or day 2 or whatever. But I think we're always open to something that makes sense for the Raiders. And would I love to be 20 to 60? Would we love to be 20 to 60? Sure. But we also love 12, 19, 80, 81, 82, 121, and 159. So it's all going to depend on what happens while we're on the clock and during the draft.
Hey, Mike.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Mike, guys?
Hey, Mike, Chris Matthews, KLAS, really quickly. They were going to introduce the Las Vegas Raiders merchandise on that opening day. Have you heard? Are the players getting caps? Are you guys sending out merchandise of these potential picks, and they're going to throw on Las Vegas gear? Or have you heard anything?
Chris, you asked the wrong guy, man. I have no idea about merchandise. I have no idea. I mean, I got enough problems trying to figure out who to take at 12. So you're going to have to talk to Will about that one, okay?
All right.
Thank you.
Mike, what's
Hey,
the
Mike,
process for the guys who were ended the year injured, and guys like Foster Moreau and some others who were in their rehab? How much contact are you guys able to have with them, and what's that process like?
I'm sorry. All I heard was Foster Moreau.
Guys who ended the year injured and are rehabbing, like Foster. Yeah. What's the process of contact with those guys, and what's the status of some of those guys?
Yeah, our medical people are allowed to talk to them, which they do. Foster's doing really well. He's been in Baton Rouge. Obviously, he's an LSU guy, and he's been rehabbing there at LSU. He's ahead of schedule. If you know the kind of kid that Foster Moreau is, you know he's working his tail off, and if anybody can come back and be ready for training camp coming off that ACL, it's going to be Foster. He's done great.
Hey, Mike, I want to ask you about the signing of Jason Witten. Is it fair to say that wasn't really an area of need?
Here's the way I look at it, and I think John and I looked at it the same way. If there's a Mount Rushmore of NFL tight ends, he's on it. And I know he's 37 years old, and I know we have a pretty good tight end room. But when you talk about bringing in a guy like him, not only can he still play, I think he had over 60 catches, he'll block the backside C gap. He's still a competitive football player. But on top of that, he brings this wealth of knowledge about how to be a professional. And you guys get tired of me talking about foundation players last year and the locker room and culture. And that's who this guy is. He's the quintessential culture guy. And we plug him in our locker room, and we've got one more veteran that can look around the room and tell people with all his experience what to do and what not to do. Show people what to do and what not to do. And even more importantly, in the tight end room, you get a guy like Foster coming off an ACL. Hopefully he's going to be 100% day one. But if he's not, we've got a conventional wide that can play. Plus, we've got a guy in that tight end room that I think is going to help the young guys. And I'm talking about all of them, Darren, Foster, Dirk. I mean, John and I looked at this we're joined at the hip on this decision with Jason Witten. We just thought it was too good an opportunity, both for our locker room and for our tight end room. And by the way, the guy can still play a little bit.
More for Mike. Anybody want one more?
Hey, Mike, it's
yeah.
Got there. I was curious when it came to signing Damarious Randall. Is he going to be a safety for you, or given his experience at outside corner, could that be an option? Where do you see him fitting in?
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things when he came out of college, where he had kind of that corner free safety versatility. Day one, he'll be a free safety, and he'll be competing for the opportunity to play with John Abram and those other guys on the back end. We love the fact that he can drop down and cover a slot man to man. But initially, we'd like to see him at free safety, and I think that's his best position.
And there he is, ladies and gentlemen, Mike Mayock, the man, along with head coach John Gruden, that have the keys to next week's draft. And it's crazy, man. It's crazy to even say that it's next week. It feels like in so many ways that like time has like ground to a halt, but we are rocking and rolling with the NFL draft next week, and I cannot wait. It is going to be a lot of fun. But we come to the end of the show, or the last segment of the show, I should say. It's Victory Formation, and producer Trev, I don't even want to do it, man. You know I don't, but no money this week, right? Nothing?
No.
Yeah, I think, as I said, unfortunately, I think that's fair. Regardless, we continue on in our quest for audio greatness. It's Eddie Paskal, producer Trav, and we welcome in our close personal friend, our senior esports correspondent, our junior draft analyst, and our resident expert on all things Southern California, although his expertise might be more in the Northern California backwoods at this point. We welcome in the great Kyle Cannon, Booby Martin. Kyle, how are you, brother?
Good morning, Eddie, Travis. Happy to be a part of it, as always.
And I was going to say, before we get into it, man, you look better than you did last week. Last week, I was a little concerned.
I appreciate that. I don't know why I looked so. I thought I looked normal last week, but clearly I didn't.
But
clearly
you look good. You look strong this week. That's what I would say. You look ready to rock. KMM, you were on the call yesterday with Double M, your guru, your sensei. And I'm curious, before I kind of deliver my hashtag takes on it, but what really stood out to you about hearing Mike go through the gauntlet yesterday afternoon?
Well, first of all, he started off by saying that he's making the donation. Awesome. Excited to see that. People helping people. Powerful stuff, right?
Oh, yeah.
Raiders are just playing their part during this crisis. Cleveland Furl and, name countless other Raiders have stepped to the plate. Josh Jacobs, Hunter Renfrow, those guys. So it's good to see Double M getting in the mix. But in terms of football and the front office, moves, free agency, it was good to hear him just touch on all the guys that we signed a little bit. Damarious Randall, he'll compete opposite of Jonathan Abram for the free safety spot. Corey Littleton and Nick K, still don't know how to pronounce his last name at the linebacker spot. Corey Littleton, he highlighted as, as a guy who can cover just as well as any player in the league defensively. And I thought it was interesting that Nick K will get the green dot. I thought that was one of the biggest takeaways from the call.
I would agree with you too. When I was on the call and kind of marking my notes down, I had a big star next to that because typically, these press conferences are the biggest waste of time in terms of press conferences. The league makes you have this press conference. It is a league mandated availability. So all the GMs have to go out and talk about the draft, and none of them want to talk about the draft. And so you don't often get a lot of like quote unquote news from it, right? Like it's kind of you're dancing around, you're doing this ridiculous tango. But that was one of the big my big takeaways too, is that Nick K is going to be the green dot. He's going to be the man in the middle for the Gunk Daddies defense. And I think that at this point, optimism is high. I mean, obviously, it's something that he can do. He's been a machine during his time in the league thus far. But yeah, I mean, that was a major takeaway for me as well.
And then on top of that, I also think it was noteworthy that he just talked about, don't reach in the draft. I mean, that's no secret. Double M is a draft guru, and he knows the ins and outs, when to make trades, when not to make trades. Even though he's only drafted 1 year, I mean, he covered it for 20 years. He's seen every possible scenario. And some of the beat guys were asking, NFL analysts were predicting that the Raiders could draft a linebacker at 19, but now that seems more likely that they're going to draft a cornerback. He didn't obviously come out and say that they're going to do that, but he was, saying that the Raiders shouldn't reach, or that he doesn't plan on reaching for a cornerback. It's the same thing for wide receiver. Follow the draft board accordingly. Don't neglect your research because it got you to that point. And that's like one thing that he was saying that he's confident in. A lot of people with this virtual draft are hung up on the fact that it's tech, it's virtual. It's going to be harder to communicate with people around the league. You're not going to be in the draft room with your colleagues, your scouts. But Mayock's got 5 whiteboards. He's ready to go.
Yeah, dude, I kind of love the idea too of Mayock just sitting on a couch, just whiteboards in front of him. No need for a computer. I mean, obviously he'll have a laptop to put the pick in and all that, but just going super, super OG. I love that. And I thought one of the things that he said that I was really encouraged by, twofold, is the first part is he said, look, this is going to be weird. This is going to be funky. It's we're living in weird, funky times, and the draft is going to be kind of a representation of that. And he goes, but you can look at it one of two ways. You can fight it, you can resist it, you can, pout and go, oh, I wish it was different, or you embrace it. You take it for what it is. You look at it as like, hey man, we're going to make the best of the situation. We're going to rally together, and that's how we're going to handle it. And he said that the coaches, the scouts, Gruden, he said that everyone has kind of bought into that idea of it, of being like, look, it's different. It's going to be weird, but we are going to embrace it wholeheartedly. We are going to dominate the draft like we did a year ago. And it's just going to be, a kind of a fun, hopefully a year from now, we look back on this and we're like, man, do you remember when we had to do the draft virtual? So I loved hearing just kind of his mindset headed into what is obviously an incredibly important 3 days for the future of this organization. But my other kind of top end takeaway after hearing him talk was one, dude, he is so smooth. I mean, Double M is just butter, baby. He is like butter with like some white wine and garlic. Like he is just, he is good. But he kind of said it that his main lesson from last year was just, and you kind of touched on it earlier, Kyle, is just the importance of patience, right? You trust the board. You trust what the board is speaking to you. You don't reach for guys that you don't need to reach for. And he talked about Trayvon yesterday. He was able to maneuver in the second round. He's like, we still got our guy. We were active. We picked up picks. And he goes, and that just comes down to being patient and not wanting to be overexcited. And I got to go get this guy. This offer's on the table. I got to go get it. And so I think hearing him sound even more confident than he did a year ago. And like I said, Double M is a smooth operator. So to hear him be even more confident, more composed, more ready to rock, like I don't know how you could listen to him yesterday and not be like, dude, they're going to crush it. Like just wake me up on Sunday and tell me who we got. Like it's going to be golden.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I find it hard to believe that any GM in the National Football League is more confident than Mike Mayock is with all of his resources, the amount of scouting he's done on these guys, the amount of connections he's made in the league over the last 20 years. If he really wants to call up a college coach, he can do so with, he's probably got everyone on speed dial. So he's done his due diligence, and I don't think that there's any prospect in the 2020 draft class that he doesn't know backwards and front.
Who do you think the most famous person in Double M's phone is?
Oh, wow. What a good question. The most famous person on his phone?
Like who would like pick up? You know what I mean? Like, do you think Double M has like Jerry Rice's number?
Oh, yeah.
Nick Saban?
I think so.
He's got to have Saban's number.
Oh, he for sure has Nick Saban's number.
Do you think him and Saban really text?
Probably not. But Nick Saban just set up an email for the first time.
That's fair.
Nick Saban might not know how to answer a smartphone. The man knows football, but I can't imagine he's very tech savvy.
Yeah, I'll give you that one. I think when I was walking around this morning getting my steps in, I was thinking to myself, I was like, what's funny is that one of the and it's obviously not a byproduct of coronavirus, but it's so funny that like it seems like more teams have unveiled uniforms since the pandemic began than in the history of the NFL prior to. Like we've seen more uniform reveals in the past 6 weeks than we probably have in the past 6 years combined. So KMN, we got to play the game, brother. We had 2 more this week for some reason. Teams decided to unveil the new uniforms. First up, the mighty Indianapolis Colts. Do you like the new unis? Do you not? Talk to me.
They changed the number font. That's it.
Yeah.
But it's like,
yeah.
Was that worth it? I don't know. And then their secondary logo, the C with the state of Indiana in the center, looks terrible. I don't know, man.
Yeah,
I like the Colts uniforms, but it's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Everyone thinks that they have to like make all these minute changes. Look at the Cleveland Browns. I know that's the next one you're going to bring up. The Cleveland Browns, what did they change? What's different about those garbage uniforms?
Well, I'm glad you brought up the Browns because yes, the Browns are the other ones that did reveal just this morning, in fact. And I'm with you, man. I don't think they look incredibly different. I was trying to look for some positives from the uniforms, and I really like the socks. Like I know they for sure changed the socks, and like the socks kind of have like that retro kind of striped like tube sock in like a cool way look. So the socks look dope, but dude, they are really hampered by that god awful color scheme. Like there's not that much you can do with that.
No, and they can't change it unless they completely change their team name, which by the way, you couldn't come up with anything better than Browns. I'll never get over that. I'm sure that there's some connection in Cleveland to Browns, but there has to be something else Cleveland is known for other than Browns. I don't even know what that means.
What is a Cavalier? Sorry, go Trav. What do you got?
It's for Paul Brown. That's what.
Oh, that's who it's for?
Yeah.
Sounds lame. I'm with you, KM, man. What is a cavalier? It's like a
Like a
swashbuckler.
musketeer. Yeah.
I didn't know that D'Artagnan was chilling in the Great Lakes.
Yeah, that's an interesting choice too. Way cooler than Browns though.
Sure. And before we move on, I'm just gonna one parting thought on the Browns uniforms. We all watched the reveal video for some reason, and I'm not gonna say that I was offended, but my ears definitely perked up a little bit as a proud Hispanic hero, as a proud Mexican American, when there was a line in that video that said, "quote Once you're a Brown, you're always a Brown." Hmm. I'll just leave that there. We can digest on that for a second, but I don't know, man. It just seemed like a weird verbiage, if you will. Weird verbiage.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not a brown man, but I can see why that could rub you the wrong way, Eddie.
This week on Upon Further Review, Eddie and Kyle break down race relations in the Midwest. I had this great, so I guess one positive of quarantine, and I'm trying to look at the positives, right? Like there's only so much negative that we can dwell on in these times. But one positive is that the fiance and I have had these, conversations that we've, never had. Like we're entertaining ourselves, right? We are each other's entertainment. And we had this great chat yesterday. It might have been Monday. Well, I don't even know what day today is, but it was about what's the first meal that you're gonna go out and get after the quarantine is lifted.
I've
And
thought
like
about this countless times.
hit me, KMM. I see the sadness behind those eyes, baby. What you got?
Well, I'm either you and I are both huge In-N-Out fans. I have yet to indulge in an In-N-Out burger. I haven't had fast food since the lockdown was in place.
And this might be a clue to your whereabouts, though, because if you're not near and if you're far away from an In-N-Out, but I know you're in California, we could triangulate your position a little bit better.
You could try. I will say I am near an In-N-Out though, so that might make it difficult.
Ooh, you just haven't gone?
Yeah, I haven't. But in terms of like sit down, there's this Mexican restaurant in San Francisco. It's called Don Pistos.
Oh, you love that place.
Bro, it's so good. It's like SoCal resident SoCal expert. There are very few places in the Bay Area that have legit, authentic, quality Mexican food. And this place is a little more on like the gourmet, smaller taco side.
The tapas.
The meats are they're so good, and the guac, mwah, fantastic. I will say, Trav, there is a spot in San Jose, Laval's. No, not Laval's, Lavix.
No, Laval's is the pizza place near the facility.
Lavix is like that orange salsa.
Oh yeah, the orange sauce. That's the best part of that place. That's addicting.
Yeah,
what's your meal,
big fan
Travie?
of
Where are you going?
I don't know. Mine would probably be a Mexican restaurant too. I can't think of one in particular because my favorite one shut down for
That means it was good, though. That means it was a good one if they had to shut her down.
Well, I mean, they shut down last year just because the rent issues. They got kind of kicked out of their place. But they haven't found a new home. But I mean, I think about that place all the time. But I mean, yeah, In-N-Out. I'm sure my first thing will probably be going to Starbucks.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
sure.
Being realistic.
Yeah.
But as far as a restaurant, yeah, I don't know. Probably one of my many go-to Mexican taquerias.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I had two choices. One of them, and because like we just got here, right? So I don't know like what the Mexican food scene is here like at all. So even if I wanted to go out and hashtag support local, like I just don't know where to go. And I was telling Kirsten, I was like, man, I would kill for a bottled Coke and like a carne asada burrito. Oh, the things I would do. So that'll be pretty high on the list. But I also I'm going to a steakhouse. When we're out of here, brother, I'm going to a steakhouse. I'm going to sit down, get a fat piece of meat, some taters, a couple cold ones, multiple cold ones, and just rock, dude. Like that sounds so good.
Yeah, I don't blame you, man. It'll be interesting to see too. I mean, sadly, the amount of restaurants and stores that are closing down because of COVID-19, what restaurants will pop up in their place if something's gone for good? Like what will fill the void? What's going to step in next and and take up the mantle. Like, who knows? There might be a nice little hole in the wall spot that shows up.
Yeah, I just hope it's and I'm not. Yeah, I mean, I just hope it's just not another chain. Like, I don't want big business coming in, man, because this is hurting. This is hurting the little guy in a big way. So I hope it's not another. I mean, I don't know. I don't think we have to be too worried about like sponsorship, like not Applebee's or something like or McDonald's. As much as I love McDonald's, I hope it's like just like a small mom and pop shop, man. Like that's what I really want. But you bring up a great point, Kyle. The culinary scene will certainly be a lot different when we get out of here. No doubt about that. Okay. All right. Thank you, Kyle. Excellent. Well, I think it's about that time. It's almost weekend time, I think. No one knows what day it is. Who cares at this point? You guys want to crack some cold ones, though? Yeah? Can we do that? You want to crack some cold ones? Here we go. All right. Who wants to start this week? I think, Kyle, you started last week, right?
I did start. I don't know. I lose track of the days. You can't expect me to remember a week ago, man.
That's true. Trav, you want to kick us off?
Sure. I'll crack my cold one from Mike Mayock and family. I know it's, a given, but I mean, that's a real noble thing. And I guess all the other Raiders that have been providing in these times of need.
Absolutely. Well done. Well done to Double M, his wife, and the entire Raiders family. I'm going to go next, and I'm going to crack a cold one. And I think we might have cracked a cold one for this group of people weeks and months ago. Who even knows, as you said, Kyle. But I read, or I should say, I saw a great story on the news the other day about this truck driver who has been just driving around the U.S., trying to, get everyone their goods as quickly and safely as possible. And he was saying that when this all started, he had he still does. He's got a young kid at home, and he was like, it's just not worth it for me to go back and worry about getting him and my wife sick. So he was like, I'm going to stay on the road. He's got his dog, and they just stay in the truck, and they go around and deliver as much as they can. And so it got me thinking about the truck drivers. And we've talked about the grocery store workers a lot, and the doctors and the nurses and the healthcare people, all of that. But I'm gonna give a little love to our truck driving brothers and sisters, man, out there, because they're busting their ass. They're doing what has to be done. And I feel like that's probably a pretty lonely job at times, but hey, man, we need them in a big way. So cheers to you, brothers. And this one's for you.
Yeah. Keep that supply chain going.
Hell yeah, baby. All right, K-Man, what do you got?
Well, I wish I would have gone first now, because you guys are going to make mine just feel so unimportant. You actually gave nods to people doing noble things. I'm going to crack a cold one for my favorite sandwich shop just outside of Walnut Creek. You got me feeling some type of way, dude, with the culinary discussion. I'm going to be devastated if Marucci's Sandwich Shop is no longer in existence, because those sandwiches were smacking. Oh, the turkey club or the pastrami, me oh my, I'm going to be devastated.
Do they have like a Facebook account you can follow to make sure they're good, or?
I'm not on Facebook.
Oh,
so
that's right. Or, Instagram.
I'm anti-Zuckerberg, as you know, Travis.
Yeah, this is an anti-Zuckerberg pod. I think we can all agree on that. No Zuck here.
Eddie, promise me you'll never allow any Facebook-owned entity to sponsor this podcast.
Oh man, that's unfortunately above my pay grade. But while I'm breathing, brother, I promise you one thing: it won't happen. Not on my watch.
That's what I love.
until next week, when I'm like, "Hey, Trav, we got a sponsor." He's like, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, the good people at Facebook have." Oh gosh, who
Don't
knows
even
if we'll
speak
ever...
it into existence.
I know. Who knows if we'll ever get any money?
Next week upon further review, Mark Zuckerberg stopped by.
I don't even know. Zuckerberg's such a nerd. He probably doesn't even like sports. Like Zuckerberg, like quarantine probably doesn't even change anything for Zuckerberg. He's just like, oh, I'm just on my webcam and like he's chilling. But we were chilling too, man. This was a lot of fun. Like I said, I look forward to this every week. It gives me a little light in my daily grind. But before we get out of here, Travi, if memory serves, we are doing our upon further review draft preview show. And if I'm looking at the calendar correctly, I believe that's coming Tuesday, correct? Can you confirm that, Travis?
Sounds right.
Tuesday. So we'll be back in just a few days. We're going to do our final thoughts on the draft. our final predictions on what we think is going to happen at 12 and 19. And we're going to get all sorts of weird, brother. I think we're working on some guests. I'm not entirely sure who we're going to have in the mix, but at the very least, it'll be the three of us chopping it up, talking all things silver and black and the 2020 NFL Draft. So until then, Eddie Paskal, producer Trav, the great KMM, big shout out to Double M for his time yesterday, Engineer Jim, and everyone else who gets our little helps, I should say, get our little program from A to Z. So in the meantime, we thank you deeply, humbly, and sincerely. And we remind you to keep washing those hands, stay safe, stay at home, and we will get through this together. So until next week, adios.
Thanks for listening to this edition of Upon Further Review on the Raiders Podcast Network.